All right, I think we're live. Hey, Adam, thanks for joining the Nik Fuller Show.
What's up, man? How's it going?
I'm pumped to talk to you today. Talk about your fitness. You're my fitness coach. You're getting me big, getting me bulked here. Talk
Yep.
about kind of your journey into fitness and everything before that. Being a marketing consultant, an engineer, kind of a very technical background, and how you move from corporate to following. I'm reading a book now, The Pathless Path. So you're kind of following that mantra. So super excited to talk. Um, Before we get into it, though, I always have to tell people, just like the most important thing about this show is to subscribe. So if you like the content, give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. It kind of makes me feel good about myself. And so, help me feel good about myself. Don't you think that's important?
Absolutely. Please do. As a fellow YouTuber, I've now working on my second channel. It does a lot. It means a lot. When you see that subscriber count go up, it's a good boost. So yeah, leave a comment, hit a like at the very least. It does a lot for the creator. So
Yeah,
subscribe.
love it. Spoken like a true YouTuber there. He had the pitch down. Awesome. Well, Adam, I think for everyone who's watching, can you give an intro? Who are you? What do you do? Like, how do you pitch yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Adam Morgan. I am now a personal trainer slash content creator. I make content on a variety of different social media platforms. So like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter a little bit, not as much. But I've had kind of a weird career up until this point. So when I was in college, I actually went to study management information systems, which I describe as like computer science without the programming.
Yep.
So it's like technical-ish. But after I left college, I actually moved up to Cincinnati from Alabama, which is where I went to school. I moved up to Cincinnati, and I was working at this this marketing consulting firm called dunnhumby at the time. They've now changed to the name 84.51. Worst name ever, but it was this really cool data consulting firm that was like Kroger's data science arm, basically. So it was this really cool company that I wanted to go work at, and I actually really enjoyed it. It was probably the best job I've ever had. But after about a year up there, I was spending so much of my time at work, like reading hacker news, reading all of these tech blogs, and just reading about really like Silicon Valley and all of the startups that were going on out on the West Coast. And I was always pretty technical in nature. So I decided to just quit my job up there and move down to Atlanta to start a career in software development. So it was a little bit of an interest, but also part of me kind of having this hunch that the job I was doing was going to be automated because I saw this wave of machine learning and AI coming in. And I just felt like finding insights and data was not something humans were going to do for very long, which I didn't really tell the people I was working with because that just seemed crazy to them. But in reality, that was part of the reason why I left. So thankfully, I had some connections from college down here in Atlanta. So I initially started working at the Home Depot. I was working as a software developer there. And I moved around from job to job for a while, eventually moved on to startups, which is where I really wanted to work. Worked at a startup, which was actually pretty successful. I left before they got acquired and all of that, but worked at startups for a little bit, then did agency work for a little while. Then I actually moved on to an angel investment firm, which is when I started doing remote work. And once I started doing remote work, I realized this is the life, and I
What
never
year
want
was
to go
that?
back. That was probably like 2015, somewhere around there, 2014, 2015. So it took me a couple of years to get to that point. But yeah, once I started working remotely, that was what I wanted to do. I was like, I don't want to sit in traffic for an hour a day commuting up from like Midtown to Dunwoody. It was like just way too much time sitting in a car. And then eventually I moved on to freelance work, still doing the same thing, doing software development, but just trying to distance myself with each job further and further away from being in an office, working a 9 to 5. And then after a few years of doing the freelance software development thing, I decided to just move on and switch to fitness, which was something I'd kind of been doing on the side while I was a software developer. So the freedom that freelancing gave me allowed me to dedicate some time in the gym and work out whenever I wanted to, rather than before work or after work, which was kind of a nightmare. But, you know, after a while of doing that, and then I started getting feedback from people online, just people asking me about training, just asking me questions about fitness. And I kind of took that market dialogue as a sign that, hey, maybe I should try and pursue this full time. And also just it being something that didn't really feel like work to me. Software development, even though I liked it, it always felt like work, whereas working out was a little bit more enjoyable. So I just decided to make the jump and kind of turn that into my job.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So there's so much to unpack there. I think I'd love to start off as you in software development and you decide to make that leap into freelancing. So kind of a, salaried employee, comfortable paycheck and moving into freelancing. What was that decision process like? Was that pretty easy kind of jump, or what all went into that thought process?
So I don't have like the best answers for these questions, because a lot of this stuff has just been like really good timing. And I mean, I guess there always is a component of risk involved, but this wasn't like something where I just was working a job and I kind of decided to start freelancing, even though that thought was always kind of there. It really just fell into my lap. Like there was a message I got on LinkedIn that was like, hey, we have this project that we think you might want to work on. You have a pretty good background for it. But they threw out this number 1099. They're like, it's not W-2, it's 1099. I'm like, what's this? And I look it up, find out, oh, that's like, you're just a sole proprietor. You just work independently, freelancing. And I just decided to take it. And then kind of that was the moment where I was like, okay, this is my entry into freelancing. And then once I got into it, I was just like, okay, try to just stay here. Try not to get out of it. So it wasn't like a lot of these people that read these business books where it's like how to become a freelancer or how to transition into it. It wasn't anything like that. It was more that a freelancing opportunity just kind of fell into my lap. I took the risk, decided to run for it. And that was kind of it, really. And then ever since then, I just managed to continue getting clients, continue getting projects sent to me until I finally decided to leave software for good.
Yeah, I think that's a good transition. So you are freelancing, and at the time, getting really into fitness. I actually found you on YouTube, not on fitness though, but you had a video that went viral during probably 2016 or 2018. I don't remember which election, but talking politics. I feel like you've always had a little bit of content creation in you. So can you talk a little bit about that, which my guess is helped spurred you into kind of this new direction?
Yeah, I've just always kind of I've always been a pretty vocal person. And in tech, I mean, I don't want to get too political on this podcast. I don't know how you like to keep it, but, I'll just keep it at James Damore, like the whole Google memo thing,
Sure.
that thing happened. And I've just been somebody who's always been pretty opinionated, pretty vocal. And I'm not the type of person to just kind of keep it to myself. So whether it's been having a blog and writing opinion posts on my blog, and then at some point I started a podcast on tech, I had that going for a while. And then I also, transitioned into YouTube and did that for a bit. So yeah, I've always had creation in mind, and it just took me a little too long, I think, to realize like, hey, you should go that route and do that instead, because you do that outside of work, even when you're not getting paid to do it, rather than like beating my head up against a wall, trying to find the best app idea, the best Facebook killer, the best Twitter killer, which is really what I was doing for way too long and for way too many years. I had this skill set that I was trying to make work. And I think you can do that, but you're forcing it. And if you're going to be working on something for hours and hours a day, it's way easier to do it if you really enjoy doing it. And I just never had that love for programming. So yeah, I guess that was why I was like transitioning to freelancing, transitioning into doing my own thing, thinking that that would make it better, but it never really did. And then finally, after my last freelance project, where I would usually take like a 2 to 3 week break just to kind of decompress and then just ramp up for my next project, I realized I was like, I have no more left in the tank. Like, I have no desire to start another project. And talked with my girlfriend, now wife, about it. And she was like, I think you're kind of done with this. Like, I think you should just do what you actually want to do and, just make that jump. So that's what I did. And yeah, it just took me a little too long. But like you said, I had the YouTube thing, the podcast thing, like there going the whole time. I just never fully committed to it.
Yeah, no, I mean, resonates a lot. I think, myself, a lot of friends as well, coming from tech startups, that space, looking for that next big idea. Do you raise money? Almost a challenge to yourself. Can I do this? Can I be that guy too? But in the end, is that like really what we're looking for? And who knows, right? But definitely resonates a lot there. So with that move from freelancing to working for yourself, and your now wife giving you that encouragement, what does that look like? Right? You go from having some income to none, and now you're kind of building up your program. What does that look like for you?
Pretty much. So again, I have to take very unconventional methods to pursue what I want to do. And I know this is not going to resonate with a lot of people, but I've tried it before. So I don't know if you know this, but I self-published a book a couple years back on Angular development, on programming. And I tried to do that while I was working a job. I was like, okay, after work, like 2 or 3 hours a day, 2 or 3 hours a night, I'm just going to work on this book and get it done and then eventually publish it. I can't do that. Whenever you have a regular paycheck coming in, it's just so easy to sit on the couch and not do anything. It's like, I'm getting paid tomorrow. Like, there's no drive to work on it. So I tried to do it and I couldn't do it. And eventually one of my freelance projects ended, or it was like coming to an end. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get super disciplined, save up every dollar I can save, and then just self-fund this. So I'll wrap up this project and then just work on this book for however many months it takes. And during that time, like, I literally only spent money on food, rent, bills. That was it. Like, I would eat out once a month at most. And even then,
You were real fun to be around.
oh my God, I felt super guilty about it. So like, and for anybody that works out there, like, I didn't buy protein powder. Like, I cut every supplement, like just went full, just bare necessities. But the book got done. And that was because I had this limited runway where every day I'm like checking my bank account. I'm like, money's running out. Like, you got to get it done. So I kind of have to put my back against the wall and remove that safety net, because if the safety net's there, I just don't have the drive to do it. So to answer your question about the fitness stuff, yeah, that's exactly what I did. Like, I mean, I saved up money. Thankfully, in software development, you get paid pretty well. But I saved up money and, talked to my wife about it. I'm like, hey, it's going to probably be rough in the beginning. Like, clients aren't going to be coming in, week 2, week 3. But she was totally cool with it. She was like, yeah, let's do it. But yeah, I basically did the same thing. I didn't do the whole thing where you work and try to do personal training on the side. I just finished that project, made the jump, and my back's against the wall, and I just have to figure it out. And I forget, I've heard Joe Rogan mention a writer who used to do this. It was like one of the old classic writers, like Walt Whitman or something. But I think that's exactly what he would do, is he had no drive to write a book while he had money. So he would just party, spend it all, go crazy, and then he would be broke, and then he would write another book, make a ton of money, and then just repeat the process over and over again. And it's not a character trait I like about myself, but I'm honest with myself to know that that's how I operate, and I guess I make it work. And you get really creative too, I will say that. It's like the whole necessity is the mother of invention thing. Like when you have no other options, it's like once money starts to get tight, like you get real creative real quick.
Yeah.
So,
What are some creative things that have come out of this?
well, one, like I wouldn't say it's necessarily creative, but when I was writing my book, I realized how little money I needed to get by, which because I planned it out. I was like, okay, here's how much I have saved up, did my bills and everything. I was like, okay, this is how much time I think I have to get by. And it was like 7 months or something like that. I was like, I have 7 months to get this book done. In reality, I had closer to like a year. So that was one good thing for me to realize is how little I need to get by. And then also to realize I can do it. It's actually not that hard. Like, yeah, it kind of sucks to not go to the movies every now and then, but I know that if it really comes down to it, I can live on nothing. And then with like the personal training stuff, my sales script, like once the calls weren't coming in or once I had a few sales calls go really bad, I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. And then it's just like the muse coming down and like, here's a gift. You worked long enough. Here's the hack for your sales script. So yeah, it's kind of hard to explain, but you just have some of these creative breakthroughs that, when there's the comfort of money, I don't think you get there. And it really all might just come down to the fact that, you're not spending as much time on it. If it's 2 or 3 hours a night, you're just not doing as much work. Whereas when it's an all day, everyday thing, you're just getting that many more reps in. But I've definitely found that when the pressure's on, all of a sudden, like I get a little bit more creative with the content I put out. I get a little bit more creative with how I sell, just a little bit more creative with the business side of things. So yeah, that'll be it.
I love that. And so, Adam, let's switch a little bit into fitness. So you talked about you started working out more as you controlled your schedule, stopped commuting. And I think if anyone looks up your Instagram right now, you're like Adonis, like you're ripped to the gills, like great physique, right? But that's not, you weren't always that guy. So I would love to learn more about your fitness journey and kind of what sparked it, how you stayed so disciplined for so long. Because that's what I'm finding is really the hard part. Like, how do you get up and put those exercises in week after week?
Yeah. So, going back to the very beginning, this is not who I was growing up. I mean, I was not the guy that always played sports. I wasn't on like a high school football team. I wasn't like playing state. Like that was not me. I was on my school's drum line in high school. Like I was chubby for a good portion of my life. Drumline surprisingly got me into shape. So I'm not one of these guys that was like a D1 athlete in college and is now like Mr. Instagram influencer, and it's hard to relate to. Like I have plenty of pictures that show who I used to be. But as far as what got me started with it, it really just came down to insecurity. Like after I graduated college and started working, just going out and dating, you just weren't fully comfortable in your own skin. And I think my interest in sports, because even if I didn't play sports, I was always a fan of sports. I think that connection always kind of made me like aspire to be like them, even if I wasn't doing it professionally or at a college level. I just had admiration for that. And then also just listening to like Joe Rogan was a guy that I was listening to a lot at the time. And, I had to be honest with myself because I would listen to Joe Rogan and, he would talk about like, oh, cryotherapy, you got to do cryotherapy. It's awesome. I'd be like, cool. And I'd like book a session, go do that. Then he would talk about like sensory deprivation tanks. You got to do a set 3. I'm like, okay, cool, do that. And then he would talk about sauna. Okay, cool, do that. And then he would talk about working out. And I'm like, I don't really want to do that. I'm like, why do I have this wall built up on that one thing? And eventually I just decided to do it. And I just started working out at home, and I bought like a kettlebell. I would do these kettlebell workouts in my apartment. I would literally come home from work, turn on Lost on Netflix, ride my bike on a stationary bike for an episode of Lost, and then I would do a kettlebell workout. And I had no idea what I was doing. Like, looking back now, I'm like, why did I even do that? Like, why did I stick with it? It makes no sense. But then eventually I worked out at home for a while, and I was like, okay, let me get a gym membership, because I didn't want to be the guy that shows up into the gym and can't bench the bar. That was like my biggest fear, which is crazy because I don't even bench. Like, I think it's a totally overrated exercise. So I don't even bench anymore. But that was my fear. I didn't want to walk into a gym and be the guy that couldn't bench. But eventually I did that. I got into a gym, and I just stayed consistent with it. Like, for whatever reason, I just made it a part of who I am. And part of it was, there's so many things. Like, part of it was just me setting a schedule for myself and telling myself, like, dude, you have to stick with this. Part of it was wanting to be more attractive to women. Part of it was listening to guys like Rogan, which I think does matter. You know, they say you're like the average of the 5 people that you're closest to.
Yep.
The great thing about the internet is you get to choose those 5 people. If you're around a bunch of losers, you can choose the 5 people that are in your head all the time. So you can choose 5 amazing podcasts. You can choose like a Gary Vee, a Joe Rogan, a Jocko, like all these people that are getting stuff done, and just have your ears being pumped full of success all the time. And I do think that matters. So it was just listening to guys like him. And then sometimes, man, it would just be like really weird stuff. Like, I'll admit, I've been in the gym before where I really didn't want to run, and I'm like, I have to finish my cardio today. And I would just pretend, like, what if, because I remember I was driving to the gym one day and I saw this advertisement that Taylor Swift was going to be in town for a concert. So when I was on the treadmill, I literally told myself, I'm like, what if Taylor Swift rolled in here right now and was getting a workout before her concert? I'm like, would you still quit your workout, or would you get it done? And I'm like, I would totally get it done. I'm like, okay, just pretend Taylor Swift's right here. Like,
I can see you at the treadmill. Would you do it? I'd do it.
Yeah, it really is that. I think people like tend to romanticize the process a little bit too much, but a lot of times it is that like angel and devil on both sides. That's like,
Yeah.
Dude, don't work out. Dude, don't work. And you have to like fight that battle. And, you know, I'll bring Rogan up again, but he mentioned one time, like, pretending that there's a documentary crew that's following you around, you know, pretending that a documentary is being made about you. If that was happening, you would live the best day ever.
Yeah.
You know, you would not be like, I feel like taking a day off today. Like, be like, oh, the documentary's recording. Okay, I'm working out even though I don't want to. You'd be eating a healthy meal. You'd be like sitting down, recording and editing that video that in any other circumstance, you'd be like, I'll just do it tomorrow. So you would live the best life if that documentary crew was following you around. And as much as possible, I try to do that. You know, I try to pretend like eyes are on me and I'm being watched. And if you can do that and you can just be honest with yourself, it's led to the best results I've had. So it's just a matter of actually doing that. And it's not easy, but don't beat yourself up too much when it doesn't happen, because you're going to have periods where your training isn't going to be the best, or, you know, you're making YouTube content and you're kind of in a rut. You just like are not feeling it creatively. You're just not there, but you just have to keep going, keep those reps in. If you're on a schedule of 1 video a week, just keep those videos coming out. And eventually you're going to get past that. And eventually, you know, you're going to show up one day, look in the mirror and be like, I actually did it.
Yeah.
what do you know? And I had that moment. I remember looking at myself in the mirror one time and I was like, okay, I actually did it. And I'm glad I stuck with it. And the more you can see that result and the more momentum you get, the easier it is to keep going.
Yeah, I love that you're looking for kind of that framework or that point of view to work towards, and hacking your mindset to stick to it. And maybe that changes based on kind of the circumstance. Maybe that documentary crew gets stale and now you got Taylor Swift that you're chasing now. But just kind of looking for those new mindsets to keep yourself and to stay consistent and to put in the work there.
Yeah, and I think you have to rely on all of them. I don't think it's necessarily one. Like you said, one day it's a documentary crew, the next day it's Taylor Swift. And sometimes it would actually be like a real girl. Like a girl would just hop on the treadmill next to me and I'm like, oh, she's cute. And then I'm like, I was about to quit. And all of a sudden, what do you know? I have like another mile in me.
Yeah.
But you just got to find what works, man. And as much as possible, do not judge yourself for whatever works. Like, I think if it works, it works, and let it be. You don't have to tell anybody. I mean, I am right now on your podcast.
Yeah.
So now everybody's going to be like, hey, Adam, what's your favorite Taylor Swift song? So, it's okay, but you just gotta roll with it.
I love it. All right, everyone, put your favorite T Swift song in the comments. So Adam, has a community around him.
Exactly. I'm gonna listen to them tomorrow during my jump roping session.
That's the playlist. No, it's awesome. And so with your fitness kind of coaching business and everything, content creation around that, can you talk about like what your coaching looks like? Full disclosure, you are my fitness coach. I think I mentioned that. We're on month 2 so far, and it's been a lot of fun. I think a lot of it is, it always comes down to the person and the effort that they put in and what do they want to get out of it. But I was looking for help around structure. I was doing a lot of, I'm very seasonal, on and off with my workouts. And I think it comes from a lot of burnout of doing, HIIT workouts, high intensity interval training of, let me do some burpees and then I'll go into a jump squat and then I'll do pull-ups and we'll do that 10 times. We'll take a 2-minute rest and do that 5 more times. Right. And I think that just became very taxing. So, I was looking for someone to like really show me how to do this properly. Like, I was a band kid, trombone in high school, but never had someone like really properly teach, like, how do you work out? How do you make that consistent? So that's kind of why I reached out, but would love for you to share kind of how you go approach coaching and what do you see people be successful with and where do you see people tend to struggle and how do you help them work through that?
Yeah. So the way my coaching works, it's usually a 3-month thing, just because I feel like that's a good amount to where like it's not so short that you're not going to see any progress, but it's not so long that it seems like it's this really long commitment. But really what I try to do is fit it into their lifestyle. Like I don't want to be so definitive or like religious with what I'm doing where it's like, oh, if you're not working out in a gym, then this isn't going to work, and some people are like that with nutrition. Like to them, there's one way to lose weight and that's keto or that's vegan. I try not to be like that at all. And really what I stress to people is that you have to find something that you're willing to do and that you want to do. I think this is one of the biggest mistakes that people make with fitness is that they box themselves into something that they don't really want to do. So maybe it's like something that's trendy like CrossFit, or it's just something like bodybuilding, which they really have no desire to be a professional bodybuilder. Whereas I try to find stuff that they actually want to do and that is actually interesting to them. So sometimes it's as simple as like, hey, I just need to work out at home because I don't want to go to the gym. And for some people, it's like integrating a certain sport into their life. Like sometimes they just dismiss how effective something like that is. They kind of view like, oh, the 3 times a week I'm playing tennis, like that doesn't really count as exercise. I'm like, no, that totally counts. Like,
yeah,
there's no reason that shouldn't. And, I try to show this through some of the content that I make too, because so many people in the fitness space online, they are very tied into one thing that they do. There are some guys who literally only post videos of them deadlifting. There are some people who only do one specific type of lifting. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you're really interested in. And especially if you're trying to be a professional in that way. But I try to diversify as much as possible to show people that there are a lot of different things you can do. And it also just helps my own mental sanity as well, because like I do get bored of stuff sometimes. Like eventually just lifting weights in the gym, like I get kind of tired of it. So I do stuff like yoga. I've recently started picking up jump roping. So if you check me out on Instagram, you're going to see a lot more jump roping content coming up, because I'm trying to learn like new skills and stuff like that. And that just helps mix things up, because I have a bike. I do like riding my bike sometimes, but sometimes that just gets a little old, and I just go out for a jump rope, learn cool tricks, and it gives me something to focus on other than just the actual cardio part of it, just like doing cardio for the sake of cardio. Now I have this like micro goal that I can kind of attach myself to, like, okay, I want to learn this little crisscross with my jump rope. Now I'm exercising, but I'm actually having fun, and I'm like getting frustrated in a good way by this small goal I've set for myself. And once I hit that goal, then I set another goal. So that's really how I try to approach fitness as much as possible, to find stuff that is actually enjoyable for you to do. And that's the way that people stay the most consistent with it. If people find running, they find running 5Ks is enjoyable to them, they're much more likely to stay consistent with that, as opposed to people that are just like doing something for the sake of doing it. So like pickleball's blowing up lately.
Yeah.
If you're looking for something to do, like go check out a pickleball court. There's one like being built right by us, and I'm actually going to go try it out once it's done. But that's my biggest piece of advice, is like to actually experiment, diversify a little bit, and find something that you can actually see yourself doing regularly.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people and myself have, misconceptions around, hey, you got to do 5 days a week. You can't miss a day. You have one off day, and you need to eat chicken, broccoli, and brown rice. And, I'm finding that's just not the case. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sorry. So from the from the exercise side of things, So from the exercise side of things, I think what I help do is bridge that gap, like reduce the amount of time, because there's so much learning. Like I said, when I first started working out, I'm like, I don't know why I was doing what I was doing. I'm surprised that I stuck with it. And a lot of times what you'll see people do is they're doing a lot of things that isn't effective and makes them actually hate what they're doing. So one thing that a lot of people do is they stick to this like 5 day a week thing. They think they have to do cardio every single day. They think they have to be lifting every single day. They really overestimate how much time they think they need to allocate to fitness to get the results that they want. And that's one of the first things I tell them to do, is like dial it back. Like I usually start with 3 days a week, because you could work out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You have a day of rest in between, and your weekends are free. If you do a solid workout Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you're totally fine. And I've watched like this YouTube video, this Jubilee video, where people think they have to work out for like 30 hours, 40 hours a week. I'm like, that is not the case. And there's a lot of people out there who actually think that that is the reality. So that's the biggest thing, is like setting real expectations for what you have to commit to get the results you want. And then also just, helping them to avoid some of the stuff that they're doing that isn't really doing much. So the people that go to the gym every day and they're doing crunches and ab work every single day because they want to lose that belly, I'm like, nope, I'm going to save you a ton of time, because we're going to focus on your diet, because that's how it happens. So on the exercise side, that would be it. And then on the dieting side, like I said, some of it is getting the diet right to get rid of the belly fat, to get the abs to pop the way that people want to, but also just to get rid of some of the misconceptions that exist out there where so many people think they have to do a specific diet to get the results they want. They think they have to jump onto something like keto or paleo or vegetarianism, whereas I am very confident, and part of me wants to do it to prove it, but I don't really want to because I have so many other things I need to do. But part of me wants to gain weight and then lose it with vegan. Gain weight, lose it with keto. Gain weight, lose it with Atkins. Just to show people, like, at the end of the day, all of these things are about restricting the amount of calories you're taking in, which is how you lose weight. They're just different ways of getting there. Yeah. So that's another thing that I do with clients is laying out to them, whatever path we take, this is essentially what we're doing. What is the one that you can see yourself doing? And for some people, they're like, oh, intermittent fasting really resonates with me. I don't like breakfast anyways. I'll just eat 2 big meals. For some people, they're like, I don't like carbs. Low carb works. You know, you just have to find what it is that works for people. And that's usually a pretty big insight for a lot of people, because they tend to think there is a little bit of magic involved in some of these diets.
Yeah. So Adam, I want to switch gears a little bit to the creator stuff. Before that, are you taking on new clients for training? It's all virtual, right? So can you talk a little bit about that? And then I would just want to pick your brain selfishly around like how you put out content and everything you do there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I am taking on new clients, starting to get to the point to where it's interfering with my content creation. So I'm going to have to think through how I'm going to work through that. But yeah, I am taking on new clients right now, but I'll say it's probably limited because eventually I'm starting to realize where my limit is, and I'm going to have to set a cap pretty soon and adjust pricing and all of that. But yeah, as of September 27th, I am taking new clients.
Perfect. I'll give them an affiliate code or something when they sign up. How's that?
Sounds good.
Cool. So let's switch a little bit to the content creation. I'd love to know just like your thoughts, your strategy on, what kind of content like you put out, the different, mediums. Like, how do you think about all that? Where are you focusing your time? I think you launched a TikTok recently or trying to grow that. So I'm just trying to learn more about the space and like the strategy that goes into it.
Yeah. So when I first started, it was entirely Instagram and YouTube. Instagram was just, at first, it wasn't a content creation thing. Like, I had no aspirations for that when I was like doing software development thing. It was just me kind of running my Instagram account the way it was. That was the first one that I really started looking into and just focusing the most of my time on. And then also YouTube, because I think that's where the most money is. Unfortunately, that's also the hardest one. Because it's longer form content and it doesn't have the exposure that you need as a small creator. That's one thing that TikTok and Instagram do really, really well, is that if you're an absolute nobody, you can blow up overnight. It's insane the potential that you have with these apps, because on YouTube, whether you're on your TV or on your computer, whatever, when you open up YouTube, there's a wall of thumbnails.
Yeah.
You have to stick out amongst that wall of thumbnails, assuming you're even getting shown on there. Instagram and TikTok, you just scroll through and your video might show up and it automatically starts playing. That is unheard of. Like, that's so valuable. And that's where I've been focusing most of my time on, because one, it just makes sense that if you have that kind of exposure, if you're creating good content, you're going to get an audience. But then two, I've also just seen it data-wise. Like, once I started creating Instagram Reels, once I started creating TikToks and YouTube Shorts, my growth has just gone up. So that's where I've focused most of my time. And then you also just kind of learn how to repurpose content. So if you make a YouTube video, you learn how to take a 10-minute video, condense it into 1 minute to release that onto Instagram, TikTok, whatever. And then the other way around, you kind of learn how to take the content that does really well in a 30-second form or a minute form and maybe blow that up into a 10-minute video. So I kind of use that as like a testing bed. If there's a video that does really well in 30 seconds and it outperforms everything else I've done, maybe I should take that and dedicate a whole YouTube video to it. Or maybe I should take that, turn it into a written form and post that on Twitter. So it's all about like learning how to take the content that does well and repurpose it to a different platform. But with that said, sometimes data just is weird, because I think you saw this, but when I was on vacation in Disney, I had a couple of pieces of content lined up, and it was super basic. It was just me showing you how to cut a gym t-shirt. So you take a shirt like this, you cut the sleeves off, just a little tutorial. While I was at Disney, I posted it to Instagram, checked it like an hour later, it had like 300 views, like really low. I was like, oh my God, this totally bombed. Okay, whatever. Posted it to TikTok. By the end of that day, I think it was already at 500,000 views. So, and I don't have that big of a following on TikTok. It's, at the time, I think I was at like 10,000 followers. So, I mean, it's decent, but nothing like crazy. So it's weird. Like, don't judge the quality of your content by how many views it gets sometimes or how many likes it gets. I think that's one thing I've really had to work past is, you know, if I would post a Twitter thread, sometimes it would get 0 likes and I would think, okay, that's a failure. I should never talk about that again. When in reality, there's a lot of hidden engagement. People just don't necessarily click that like button. They might have shared it with somebody, you just didn't see it. They might have actually like sat and thought about it and been like, oh, this is interesting. But they just didn't take the time to reply to you. They just didn't take the time to actually click that like button. And then also it just performs differently on certain platforms, because a video that got 1,000 views, like 2 days later, it had 1,000 views on Instagram, eventually hit 1 million on TikTok. And now it's at 1.1 million. Yeah. And I don't know how to explain that. And YouTube, I think it got like 1,000 views. So it's weird.
And so I have 2 questions here. So one on, you know, the goals for the content creation, you know, getting followers, growing kind of that community. Where do you want to take that, like from a monetization standpoint, or what are your goals from that? And then we'll talk just operationally, like how do you cut all this stuff? Do you use any like VAs and everything?
Yeah, so goals wise, I would say there's like a couple of different goals. Might not be the best from like a business point of view. This is where you'll find out that I'm just like totally winging this stuff. Sometimes I post content and it's purely educational. So I put myself in the mindset of, okay, when I was 6 months into working out, what did I want to know? So I try to go back to that mindset and answer those questions for that person. Sometimes I'm creating content and maybe it's just to be a little bit funny. Sometimes I'm creating content and it's kind of self-deprecating. So I'm learning a new skill, like this thing called an air flare. It's like this breakdancing move, really crazy. And I'm just like, okay, let me just document this process and try and make it funny and just show the beginner side of me in addition to the really in shape side of me that knows what he's doing. So just a little bit of a contrast. And then sometimes it's just, you know, kind of lead generation stuff. So I'm like posting content, hoping that people will see it and be like, I want this guy to train me. So sometimes it's just me promoting free content I have out there, or sometimes it's me kind of doing inspirational stuff. Like, this is what I used to look like. This is what I look like now. This is how I got there. And I can show you the way. So it's kind of a bunch of different stuff. And I don't think I don't know. I'm all over the place, but I think it's also because I'm trying to find out what works. And then I also just think it kind of helps to have a bit of a mix, because I think if it was always educational, you're not going to get the lead generation as much as you want. And then if it's always educational or always funny, then you're not going to get the type of audience that's like, hey, this guy's a trusted authority who can teach me stuff. He's just always hopping on the latest TikTok audio trend or whatever. You know?
Right. Yeah, it's
So
not right now. It's not all just a lead funnel.
yeah,
It's you're still figuring out where do you want to take the business. The business plan isn't set in stone yet,
yeah,
but
and
active creation, is what you enjoy.
yeah, and the more I do it, the more I'm starting to realize what resonates with each platform.
Mm.
Instagram, I would, for lack of a better term, is like more hoity-toity, like high class. It's got to be like very visually, aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah,
Whereas TikTok, you can like it can be super ghetto, like green screen, like they almost it's like the early days of the internet. They kind of
yeah,
want something that isn't as polished. And then YouTube, I don't know. Like I can't figure out YouTube for the life of me. Even the shorts on YouTube, it's super weird. I'll post shorts sometimes, it'll get 10 views, and then the next day I'm at like 2,000. I'm like, what is going on?
yeah.
So YouTube's all over the place, man.
So with all the content creation, are you filming, editing, posting all that yourself? Do you have any help? What does that look like?
I do it all, man.
Yeah,
I am kind of curious about other people. I would like to reach out to some people and be like, are you guys hiring people to do your editing? You
yeah,
guys hiring people to do like, because editing is very time consuming. Like, I don't think people really understand how much time editing takes. And part of it might just be because I'm new to it and I'm not like super proficient in it. But even something like a minute long reel will be like a full day of work for me sometimes.
hmm
So it does take a lot of time. But I just don't feel comfortable outsourcing that just yet because if there's one thing I've learned in software when I've been on the hiring side of things, one, hiring is hard enough when you know exactly what you need.
right.
And then two, when you're taking something that's very creative and I don't really know exactly what I'm creating, even as I'm creating it, and I don't it's just very hard. Like, how do I hire somebody to do this very creative thing that I haven't even fully figured out myself?
Yeah,
So I've trust me, I've been tempted to do it, but I feel like the second I do it, it's just going to cause me more problems. So I don't think I'll do it until I'm at the point to where I'm like, okay, I'm making enough money here that it just financially does not make sense to do it otherwise.
yeah. No, makes a lot of sense. Hard to tell someone what to do if you don't know what you want.
Yeah, and I don't because there's been so many times where I've like been in the middle of editing a video and I'm like, okay, pause, redo, completely switch the story. And
Yeah,
I'm like, how would I do this with a third party and have a day turnaround, 2 day turnaround? Like,
yeah,
there's just no way. So I
yeah,
would have to plan content so far in advance, and I hate doing that.
yeah. I'm trying to convince my wife's cousin to, be my editor for stuff.
Oh yeah,
But
that's a little easier.
yeah, we haven't figured that out yet. But he came to the clay shooting event, and I made him like film stuff and record it. So I was like, just make a video out of it, man. Like, let me know when it's done. I'll post it. I don't know what I want yet, but I know
Nice.
I need to put stuff out. No, this is awesome. I think that's everything I'm walking through here, Adam. This has been so fun. I really appreciate you being like so candid and open with everything that you have going on. Um, do you want to leave the audience with anything? Where can they find you? Any sage advice? You know, what do you want to tell them?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to follow me, Instagram would be the best place. Adam J Morgan is my Instagram, and if you click the link that's below, that'll also take you. There's like a link in the footer somewhere. And then if you're out there, if this has resonated with you, if you're like trying to figure out how to work out, like reach out to me if you want to, but at the very least, like just do something. Like
Mm,
I mentioned earlier, when I would work out in my apartment, it literally started with a kettlebell and a stationary bike in my apartment. And I had no idea what I was doing. And it's the greatest decision I've made in my life. And I have a whole YouTube video on it, like my transformation, like how I got started. I break it all down, show you some of the original workouts I did. But I think that's a big mistake that people make. They just think they need the perfect plan when really they just need to start doing something. And the perfect plan, the bad thing about a perfect plan is it's usually very work intensive. Like the perfect plan isn't like, oh, here's a little bit of work to do. It's a lot of work. So even if you had the perfect plan, you probably wouldn't want to do it. So start with baby steps and build from there.
Yeah, love that. You could apply that advice to a lot of things.
Yep, everything.
Awesome, man. Well, like I said, this has been so fun. I'll put all the links down below where people can find you. And if you made it this far, I appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe, give us a like. A lot more content like this. Yeah, there's the finger. I don't know how to edit it, but it'll be there. And yeah, if you have any questions for Adam, leave them in the comments. I'll make sure he answers them. And we will see you on the next episode. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you. See you.